The pandemic changed a lot of things, especially in the workplace. If I was a hacker, myself personally, it'd be where is the easiest place for me to attack with the biggest return? One thing I will say, cybersecurity still needs to be top of that list.
The remote access into the company needs to be protected. A VPN becomes a must.
สวัสดีครับขอต้อนรับเข้าสู่ CIO World Business Talk นะครับวันนี้เราออกนอกสถานที่วันนี้มาที่จังหวัดภูเก็ตนะครับโรงแรม JW Marriott มาร่วมงาน Kaspersky APAC Cybersecurity Weekend 2022 นะครับผมมีหลายประเด็นนะครับที่เกิดขึ้นภายในงานวันนี้เขาเชิญนักข่าวจากทั่วเอเชียแปซิฟิกเนี่ยมาพูดคุยกันท่านผู้บริหาร Kaspersky นะครับก็ได้มาอธิบายสิ่งที่เกิดขึ้นในโลกของ Cybersecurity นับจากวันนี้เป็นต้นไปนะครับว่าจะเกิดอะไรขึ้นผมมีโอกาสได้พูดคุยกับผู้บริหารของ Kaspersky นะครับระดับเอเชียแปซิฟิกแล้วก็ Southeast Asia น่าสนใจมากครับท่านให้ความเห็นเกี่ยวกับโลกของ Cybersecurity ที่เปลี่ยนไปหลังจากยุคของโควิด -19 นะครับ Digital Transformation เข้ามาทำให้เกิดอะไรขึ้นรวมไปถึงคำแนะนำครับสำหรับผู้บริหาร C-level ต่างๆที่จะรับมือกับ Cybersecurity นับจากนี้ต่อไปครับติดตามชมกันเลยครับสวัสดีครับตอนนี้ผมอยู่กับคริสคอร์เนลนะครับVice President Global Sales Network Managing Director Asia Pacific ของ Kaspersky นะครับ Okay now we stay with Chris Connell VP Global Sales Network Managing Director APAC
Yes indeed
Thank you for having me today
You're very welcome
I have a couple of questions about cybersecurity world Okay as we know the world has changed because of the pandemic.
Of course.
And digital transformation, right? Cyber threat changed after COVID-19. It's been from now. What's going to happen?
It's a good question. It's obviously changed. The world has changed. It was changing before the pandemic. The world was becoming more digital anyway. Okay, but the pandemic has just accelerated lots of things. And obviously during the pandemic, and I know your question was about what does it look like now in the future, but let's just set the scene for a moment. The pandemic changed a lot of things, especially in the workplace, working from home, hybrid working as it now is starting to, hybrid working, work from home, some are going back to the office, but during the pandemic, it created a lot more risk to the individual, but also just as importantly, if not more, to the business. Working from home, people have a little bit more time. Their management team isn't looking over their shoulders to check that they're actually doing their work 8 hours a day. They forget about the IT policies that were in place when they're in the office. So people were at home, a little bit of extra time, clicking on malicious links, on social media platforms, on their social messaging websites, messengers on websites, which then created the business a problem. It created businesses problems, which was, are they protected enough at home? Is our infrastructure protected enough? Because these bad guys out there, have got more time on their hands now and they think, the world is now vulnerable, So businesses had to massively change their approach to cybersecurity, and I touched on that earlier on with regards to how cybersecurity, was low priority when it came to an IT department's priorities, and also to budgeting when it comes to company budgeting. Now, number one, number two. So obviously that's ramped that up. Now, what does that look like for the future? It's not going to change. People are now expecting to work from home. They are, or at least a hybrid model, at least, So that infrastructure has to stay. That what they put into place to start with maybe was considered as a short-term fix because everybody's eventually going to go back to the office. No, that needs to stay and it needs to constantly improve. It constantly needs to be reviewed. It constantly needs to be checked because every day there will be another threat. There will be another threat. There will be another threat. And through that change, companies need to, be fully aware, educated, and that goes back to another point, education. That to me, I get asked what's the biggest challenge in the world of cyber. We can talk about technical, we can talk about threats and vulnerabilities. the biggest challenge to me is education and awareness. You know, people, because it was treated as a blasé kind of thing in the past, people weren't aware of, you know, what were they at risk from? What were the threats that were there? Not just the consumer, not just the human being, but also the businesses. You know, so we need to continue, whether it be for ourselves, for our customers, for our partners, for our journalists and people, to keep getting their messages out there. These are the things to look out for. These are the things you shouldn't do. These are the things you should do. Because the other part with awareness comes responsibility. You know, so if something does happen, don't be afraid to say it's happened, because if you hide it, the chances are it's going to impact you more, right, than actually telling somebody about it. At least if you tell somebody about it, something can be done about it, right? So I think the biggest challenge there is to continue that awareness, you know, continue to look for where the vulnerabilities are within the organisation, and continue to regularly review, regularly update, regularly train, regularly educate.
If you are criminal, if you are hacker, what is in your mind now?
What is in my own, if I was to be one? Oh.
What did we point that you saw, you see it today?
If I was a hacker, myself personally, it'd be, where is the easiest place for me to attack with the biggest return? You know? We kind of touched on it earlier. Okay, consumer level, okay, obviously there's still potentially a possibility of a return. You know, but I'd be looking at areas around the world, companies around the world that aren't protected enough, that are vulnerable, where I could potentially get the biggest return, you know. And that could be many countries around the world. It could be many different types of organizations in different marketplaces around the world, you know. But that would be my, you know, that's like any business, you know, where can I go to get the biggest return? I guess, in a way, a hacker's a businessman too at the end of the day. What's the easiest thing for me to do to get the biggest return?
What concept or a mindset that Kaspersky wants to drive or raise awareness in cybersecurity from now in the future?
I think there's two things there. I think it's good to give everybody an update, you know, on Kaspersky, you know, how things are going within Kaspersky, but more importantly, what we're doing to continue to do what we're good at, you know, which is protecting the world, but more importantly now, trying to make the world immune. You know, we touched on some stats earlier on today. You know, typically the word antivirus, you know, which it's not anymore, you know, it's a lot more than just antivirus endpoint, you know, but people still have that perception that cybersecurity is just about antivirus and protecting the endpoint. You know, and we still do a great job at that, you know, and it's still needed. You know, but it's not just about that anymore. It's about the non-endpoint part. It's about, you know, the predicting, the threat intelligence, you know, doing stuff about it before the event takes place. You know, there were some stats, you know, that I had recently. I'm just trying to remember what they were. And I did write them down earlier as well. So, but I don't know. I'll try and remember them. But, you know, when it comes to investing in the world of cyber, you know, the kind of split used to be like 80% endpoint and 20% non-endpoint. You know, okay, it was all about protecting here and now and all these bits and pieces. Now, depending on the country and depending on the region, you know, that's kind of starting to take a spin around now to be a role reversal. You know, endpoint is probably now around the 40% of investment kind of levels to 60% now in non-endpoint. In some areas, 30% endpoint, 70% non-endpoint. You know, so yeah. So the messaging I'd like people to take away really is, alongside the pieces I've talked about already about education, awareness, and letting people know, is, you know, that it's not just about this or this now. There's a lot more behind that, and, you know, we as an organisation, you know, are growing rapidly in that space, and we have technologies in that space that are winning awards. You know, if I take Asia as an example in that space, we touched on global results, if memory serves me correctly, earlier on. But if I take Asia specifically, I touched on non-endpoint. I think it was 80% growth, something like that, wasn't it, globally? Asia is one of the biggest contributors to that non-endpoint growth. But Asia's a very, very big place. So it's still only a small piece of the pie. There's so much more that we need to do in this region. We need to do it globally, you know, but if we're talking APAC specifically, there's so much more to do. We're on a good path, we're on a good journey, but a lot more needs to come.
Yeah, as we know, the C-level, especially my audience, my readers,
Okay.
are
CIO, CISO, CDO, there are many things to think about for do the business today, like infrastructure change from on-premise to cloud, AI technology, IoT technology, and many things come, you know.
Yeah, of course.
And security also, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is the executive challenge?
Of course, listen, I'm in business too. I have to look at all them different things, you know, where do I make sure I invest in the right ways and what do I do, you know. But for me, I'm not an IT, so I'm not a CISO, right? So it's not about infrastructures, it's about resource, it's about, you know, marketing dollars and stuff like this. But at their level, at their position, of course, they need to make sure that you know, their infrastructure is, you know, up to date, it's etc. But one thing I will say, cybersecurity still needs to be top of that list. Why? Because all of that other stuff that you will be spending money on and investing will be useless if you're just getting, you know, you're not protected from a cyber perspective, you know. So it's great having all these fancy new Oraxa servers and networking products or whatever, but if you're not protected, then things will, well, okay, not become redundant, they're still going to work, you know, but they're not going to be able to, you know, function the way they are because of the cybersecurity threat that's there. So I get it. It's about balancing, you know, it's about balancing, but, you know, but then it's also, then goes back to the other point I said, it's about education. Maybe your CEO, you know, just isn't aware as much about the threats and the vulnerability there. So it's not just about educating your staff, it's about educating your board members too, you know, where the investment and the budgets come from. So my message to take away from that in a very simple terms is, yes, it's all important. Of course, it's a challenge to balance, but if you're not protected at first, then you might as well not even bother, you know. So
ตอนนี้ผมอยู่กับคุณเซียงเทียงโยนะครับท่าน General Manager Southeast Asia ของ Kaspersky นะครับ
Yeah, I have some question, a couple of questions for you. What is the difference for executive in South Asia compared to other regions? Yeah, that concern about risk and cybersecurity, in your opinion.
Okay, I would say the similar things, Thailand, Southeast Asia compared to the rest of the world, is the awareness is definitely there. And so we can see that we have a lot more inquiries, we have a lot more in-depth conversations that we never had, say 2 years ago. Right? Because the awareness, the understanding may not be there. Now, I'm just looking at some of the statistics, right? In Thailand, there are 32 million infections in 2021. Sorry, in worldwide, there are 32 million infections that we blocked in 2021. Just January to April this year, 35 million. So you can see the sharp increase. In Thailand, the number of internet-based attacks in 2021 was 152,000. In 2022, until now is already 317,000. So you can see again there's a sharp increase. Right? So therefore it is we can see that is the similarity. And from observation, we can see that there are a lot of inquiries into how to handle the more sophisticated attacks. Right? Maybe I should elaborate more. If you look at enterprises in terms of the security position, I'll always classify into a few areas of priority. The first is always the basic hygiene. You got to do your system updates, you got to do your patches, you got to do your backup. Because one day if you get hit by ransomware, you need to be able to recover. Right? So without backup, it's difficult. Right? Then the second stage is you look at prevention. So when it comes to prevention, there are two types. I was very broadly the basic. The basic will be you put things into your laptop, your PCs, your server, in the cloud, your server, on-prem, your storage. This is to protect what we call endpoint, because this is the destination point, right? That you get the first point attack. So this is the parameter, this is the endpoint. This is the basic. Then the next stage for prevention is you look at threat intelligence. So threat intelligence will be the outcome of all the research that you hear this morning. And this morning you hear from different researchers. Yeah. And you can see the level of sophistication of the hacker groups are already, is very different today, right, compared to say 10 years ago. Now, they track close to 200, in fact more than 200 organized crime groups. And these are all targeted attacks. These are all sophisticated hackers. So you need that threat intelligence for your early warning. Right? So if you've done your hygiene, you've done your prevention, both basic and advanced, then you will progress to the next step, which is the recover. What if you get hit? The what if you get hit is actually quite real, because like for example, when we did our survey, right, they said that 2 in 3 said that they have been victims of ransomware attacks, and that's a lot. Okay, so when you get attacked, how do you recover? Now, so it comes in 2 forms. One is the technical front, which is how you clean up, how you block all the backdoors. Because when you get infiltrated, it is not just what you see. The hackers may open up more backdoors. So if you don't really go into your environment and clean up everything, you may come back again. Right? So this is a technical part. But as the technical people are trying to solve the problem, how do you handle the media? How do you handle media like all of you, right? They will be asking questions. What happened? Who's the attacker? Which country it comes from? Why do you want to do that? Are there more things that you never find? You know? You ask all these questions. And it's only right as media you ask this question. Then how does the company respond? If they say too much, their share price may crash. Right? So this is all skills. You need to say, you need to inform people sufficiently so that you're credible, but yet you shouldn't say too much to crash your price. So these are all skills that they need to learn, and that's part of recovery. So I will say in a lot, what we see is the different companies start investing in different stages, and we see a growing maturity in moving towards the advanced prevention and towards recovery. Yeah.
After the pandemic and the post-pandemic happened, we have seen the many companies move to digital.
Yes.
Completely. Work anywhere, work from home, right? And there are many things happen in the digital world, digital working, you know. Okay, I want to know your suggestion or advice for executive, C-level, or CISO or CIO, that they need to prepare investment or training or everything. Maybe something they need to talk with the board, you know, to fight back or to prepare to prevent the same for their company.
Okay, so think of it this way: the remote working trend is there because of pandemic, and it will stay. It will continue to stay. Then, and if you think about it, it's like last time when you have a company, everybody go back to the company, you have network within the company, and you do work in that premise. Once you get out, the data still stays there, you don't bring it home. Right? But today, you remote lock in, you're still doing your same work. But what happens is data between your laptop goes through a long route before it reaches the company. It goes through your home router, it goes to the internet company before it reaches your company. So the old concept is, this is my data, I protect it. And there are only a limited number of resources that you need to protect. Now suddenly you imagine like this is like this is like a spider web. You pull and it goes in different directions now. And now every link needs to be protected. So So a lot of IT people are going crazy over this. Right? So therefore, it highlights two key things. One is the remote access into the company needs to be protected. You cannot go and protect every house, every router. So what you do is a VPN becomes a must, so that the channel is encrypted. Right? And then now your laptop that you work from home may be shared between you, your children that's doing studying from home, and etc. Then it becomes a shared device, and which means it can be compromised by your children. Right? And that's the scary part. Right? So therefore, the endpoint protection become a must. Right? So going back to what I spoke about, the different stages, right, of the protection, then the basic, the hygiene part is the backup and the updates and all that. The second one is the prevention. The prevention is basic and there's advanced. Basic is your laptop, but now the VPN becomes a basic. Right? The VPN becomes a basic, and then the laptop protection becomes a basic. You must. It's no longer optional. You must. Right? Then you need to be able to detect and respond. So in that category, there are a lot of tools available. I mean, we have the whole portfolio, but I won't go into it. Next is then you got to invest to know what's over the horizon, and that's the threat intelligence you hear a lot this morning. So now I will say a lot of companies, not only they need to protect what is within their premise, it becomes an environment is very stretched out. So the investment into the different, they probably got to prioritize more. Right? But the idea is still the same. The few stages, it's just got to push the boundary to now invest more. They used to think that the basic of the prevention is enough. They probably now need to invest into the advanced part of the prevention. Yeah. So that's the reality now.